Good morning, my dear children. I am going to continue the lesson. So in the previous class, we learnt about two types of pollination, isn't it? Self-pollination, then cross-pollination, and also we learnt about artificial pollination. And we also know what is fertilization, isn't it? Now after fertilization, what happens to the flower? We learned that pollen grains and male gamete come and it fuses with the egg, isn't it? Why is this happening? After fusion, what happens there? Yes, this is a part of reproduction. So to get a new plant, we need seeds. So what is happening there? After fertilization, it fuses together and forms a zygote, it is called, that you will learn more about in the bigger classes when you go. But after fertilization, what happens there? There are certain changes that happens in a flower. So after fertilization, a fruit is formed and seeds are found inside the fruit. So before learning that, we have to see what are the different changes that happens to the flower after fertilization. For that, we will go out in the garden into teacher's small vegetable garden, and teacher will show you what are the changes that will happen to the flower after fertilization. So we will see that and come back. Now I am here near a plant. Here you know what is this, isn't it? Yes. You will be having a small vegetable garden like this in your home also. Now here I just want you to see what happens after the fruit, the flower is fertilized. So here now you can see this is a flower, isn't it? Now here you can see the fruit also outside. What happens to the flower after it is fertilized? Now look at this small thing, see here. This is a flower after fertilization. Here you can see the fruit is coming out, isn't it? Here you can see the fruit is coming out. When the fruit is coming out, what change can you see in this? Here you can see the flower is withered and gone. Now the calyx, did you see the calyx? The calyx is becoming little more stronger and you can see the fruit coming out. Now in this fruit, you see what has happened here. Here the calyx is gone. Now this part, the pedicel, is become little more thicker and harder. Why is this change of the pedicel here? Yes, that is because when the fruit is formed outside, the pedicel must be strong enough so that it can hold the fruit. So what happens here? The pedicel becomes stronger, thicker and fatter and stronger. The calyx also become thicker and stronger and fatter. Here you see the pedicel here, the pedicel of this. See, now it's just a flower. Look at the pedicel of this. This is thin pedicel. Look at the difference of the pedicel here. This pedicel has become thick. See the difference between the two pedicel here. See, one is fat, one is thin, isn't it? So this is the difference between the pedicel. Here look at this pedicel. This is too thin. So there are differences which happens in a flower after it is fertilized. The fruit comes out. So the gynoecium or the ovary turns inside into a fruit, and then what happens? The ovules inside turns into seeds. That is the change you can see. So now look at this. So look at this corolla. This has got a corolla. Look at the flower, the calyx and the pedicel. And look at this also. What has happened to the pedicel, what has happened to the calyx, and what has happened to the flower here. Only the ovary remains and the petals fall off. All the other, the stigma and the style, all that falls off, and only the ovary becomes big and round. It turns big and strong into a fruit. Now, so here difference, did you see? This is the difference what we find after the flower is fertilized. Is it clear now? Yes, children. Now we have seen what changes happen to the tomato. We also saw what will happen to the long beans plant, isn't it? Yes. So what happens to the pedicel? What happens to the corolla first? The corolla will dry and fall off. Along with the corolla, what are the things that will fall off? The stigma will fall off. The style will fall off. The androecium, if it is a bisexual flower, both the androecium, the filament and the anther will fall off. And then what will remain on that flower? Yes, we saw only calyx remains, pedicel remains, the ovary remains, and the ovules will remain. All the other parts will fall off. The thalamus also will become strong, so as it is able to hold the fruit. Now the fruit will sit on the thalamus, which will become very strong. The thalamus we cannot see from outside. So the calyx, it protects the fruit. We learned it holds the flower, and it holds the flower when it turns into a fruit also. Is it clear? So the pedicel will become strong, the calyx will become strong, the thalamus will become big and strong, and the ovary turns into a fruit, and the ovule turns into a seed, into seeds, and all these become strong, so it will be able to hold the fruit strongly, because the fruit will be very heavy. It is not like the flower. So because the fruit is heavy, all the other parts will become strong and fat, so as it will be able to hold the fruit properly. Here children, I want you to show the difference what happens to the flower after it is fertilized. So here I don't have a cucumber flower with me, which is there in your textbook, and instead I have a lady's finger flower. So in this lady's finger flower, I have cut it into two. Now here you can see this is a bisexual flower. You can see the pollen grains, anther and filament here, and you can see the stigma, the style, the ovary and the ovules, isn't it? So here in this flower you can see the ovary and the ovules inside. Can you see the ovules inside here? Yes. So this is the gynoecium of the lady's finger flower. Now after fertilization, what happens to the flower? I showed you the pedicel and the calyx and all that changes, becomes harder and stronger. The corolla will fall off, isn't it? But what happens to the ovule and the ovary? For that, we have to look into the fruit of the lady's finger. Now this is the fruit of the lady's finger. This is the flower of the lady's finger. This is the fruit of the lady's finger. So what happens after fertilization? This is what happens. So can you see inside the lady's finger? What has happened? The ovary outside, that is this outside ovary, has changed into a fruit like this. And when we cut open the fruit, what can we see? These ovules, which you can see inside those small white dots there, those have changed into seeds. So this is the change what happens inside the ovary or inside the gynoecium to the ovary and the ovules. This is the change what happens. What happens to the pedicel and calyx and all, we know. We have seen the video. What happens? Now what happens to the ovary and ovule is this. The ovary is outside and the ovules are inside. So that ovary and ovule has changed into a fruit and seeds inside. Is it clear? Now in that video which I showed you about the lady's finger, there you saw in your textbook, we have on page number 40, we can see in the textbook on page number 40, please take it. Here you can see here, we have seen the ash god and the fruit and the ovary, the gynoecium of the ash god. So because I don't have an ash god or I don't have a cucumber, I showed you the lady's finger, the flower and the ovary, the flower and the fruit I showed you. So there we saw the ovary, it turns into a fruit, and the ovules inside turns into a seed, into many seed. So the seeds are the ones which helps in producing a new plant. So here in your textbook you have a table given there. Can you see the table which is given in the textbook there? You have to write the different parts. So this work you have to do: the pedicel, thalamus, calyx and corolla. What change did you find in all these parts? That you have to write the change. Please draw this table in your notebook and write the change what you saw in the video. The same change you have to write in your notebook. Thank you, children.